All right, awesome. Well, welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. My guest today is Ryan Tan. He's an investor, he's an entrepreneur, he's based in Sydney, Australia. And Ryan describes himself as a curious person who's spent the last few years really self-educating, teaching him skills that he feels like he didn't learn in school. So things like sales, things like personal branding, investing in the stock market, repairing credit, even applied psychology. So all these practical skills. And he says that he's a living example of how a little bit of curiosity can take you from clueless in life to achieving the things you want to achieve. And for Ryan in particular, these achievements include becoming the #1 salesperson for Vodafone in 2017, which was out of 1,000 plus employees. And he was also awarded for having the best marketing strategy as part of work he did for Unilever, which is one of the world's largest brand conglomerates. And
Yeah,
he's also built a stock portfolio, which has actually outperformed the market for the past 6 years in a row. So Ryan says he's still on his journey to mastery. He doesn't know everything, but he wants to share his knowledge. He's learning new things every day. He wants to help people along the way. And he's recently started building his personal brand online. So through his social media, through his online courses and his one-on-one mentorship program, he's teaching people mostly around financial literacy. So teaching people principles of money, how it works, how to make the most of it. And with all that said, Ryan, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
thanks for having me, James.
Good to have you here. So I was thinking a good place to start would be how we met, because I came up to Sydney for a week, probably about a month ago, and you reached out to me to meet up, and we ended up getting dinner together and having some good chats, and it was good to connect. And I remember being impressed because not many people are like that. Not many people would sort of put themselves out there and reach out to someone and ask to connect. I think it's a really great thing you're able to do, and it showed you're sort of a curious person. You had a hunger to learn. You wanted to connect with people, and you're open. So I was curious, is that always been the case for you? Have you always been a curious person looking to connect with people, or is that something you developed over time?
Yeah, it's a great question. To be honest with you, I think I made a radical change in myself at the age of 15. So, back in school, I say, extremely introverted. I was very shy. I was not very confident. And at the age of 15, I decided I needed to make a big change in my life if I was to achieve my goals. And I realized that, I didn't want to be another cog in the machine. I wanted to be able to achieve bigger and better things and break out of that traditional mold. So,
Mm.
yeah, I made that decision to change myself completely. I tried to socialize a lot more. I tried to, do some sales kind of things as on the side as well. And I took on a part-time job back then. So that was all very helpful in building my confidence. But as you alluded to before, that trip I did overseas for Unilever, they make a lot of consumer brands like Ben and Jerry's ice cream. That was
Mm.
probably the biggest thing that had the biggest impact on my confidence. And I pretty much went into that trip. I was still a bit shy, a bit timid. And I ended up coming out of that 3-week intensive boot camp trip. I felt very confident in myself. I felt like I had built a lot of skills in the program because there was a lot of aspects like public speaking and things which, really propelled me out of my comfort zone. I felt very worried, in terms of getting up in front of audiences and speaking. And, like we're doing now, none of this is pre-planned. I mean, we're just going through the whole thing. But,
Absolutely.
yeah, being able to,
Yeah, that's awesome. Before we jump into that, because I want to talk about that internship you did, but sort of going back to how you were, you said you were an introverted guy, you're pretty shy, you're sort of still in your shell when you were 15. Was there, did you kind of like, because I think a lot of people do feel that way, and they never actually break out of it. Like they never take that step to push themselves and challenge themselves. They don't know how to do it. So was there like was there one thing, did you just wake up one day and just decide like I need to like change this, or was did you sort of project yourself in the future and see that if you stayed on this current path you weren't going to achieve your goals? Like, is there anything you can nail it down? Like, was there one thing, or was it just you just felt like you needed to change? Like, can you go into that a bit?
I felt I needed to change. I mean, I back, before 15, maybe on the border of 14, 15, I felt a bit weird inside because I knew that I couldn't really communicate with the outside world, and what I really wanted to say could never be communicated in that kind of way. And I felt like I had things to say, and because I was obviously being a naturally shy person at that age, I kind of felt like I needed a change. And when you have that feeling inside you, when you need to make a change and do something a bit different, but then obviously we don't do it for a various number of reasons.
Yes.
So yeah, that was me.
It's
And I guess
almost like, yeah, absolutely. So it kind of sounds like, because I've always found for myself personally, there's, like you said, we know we need to make changes in certain areas, but it takes a certain amount of, you have to almost reach this pain threshold where it's almost too unbearable for you to it's more uncomfortable to stay at your current level than the uncomfortable tasks you need to do. So it sounds like you kind of just reached that point and then just knew you needed to take action. Is that fair?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I guess that's something that's unfortunate about a lot of humans, including myself, is that, pain is a strong motivator for change, and it's a strong thing to
Yes.
push us out of our inertia and get
Yeah.
us to change. But then again, it's also a good thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that kind of motivated me. I felt like I couldn't really communicate with the outside world, and the pain of not being able to, was too shy and all that. Really couldn't public speak and do all that kind of stuff. That propelled me to change, and I started socializing a lot more. I took the part-time job on, and I forced myself to come out of my shell and become a lot more extroverted and trying to get around people, especially very extroverted people, so I could, raise up my level, to be not so shy, to become, at least normal, in my opinion. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely, man. I think that's a good point because I consider myself an introverted person. I don't think I'm a shy person. I think I was a shy person at one point, but I don't think I'm shy anymore. But I do still think I'm introverted. But just getting around extroverted people, like you said, and sort of people who do push you outside your comfort zone, that's definitely been key for me, and sounds like it was for you as well.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, that's what you guys should do. A few people have been asking me, and people ask in general, I feel sad all the time, I feel depressed all the time, and it's usually because something's not right within you. You've got to go and say, is it from social, is it from financial, or whatnot? But take that feeling, take that pain, and use it as a catalyst to change something that is wrong. And do it today, don't do it tomorrow. So after this life call, I'm going to punch straight through it and get started on that.
Awesome. I love it, man. That's good advice. So next thing I wanted to talk about was, as we alluded to just before, this internship that you took in Singapore, because in the pre-interview you said that was sort of like a big turning point in your life, or something that had a really big impact on you. So I was wondering if you could just explain, like, what was this internship in Singapore? How did it come about? What was it involved, and sort of what did you learn from it, I guess?
Yeah, great question. It'll be quite a lengthy response, so I'll try and keep it brief. Yeah, I guess that's probably one of the best things I've done in the past 2 years is to take my education into my own hands. And when I was at university, I saw this advertisement for a trip. And obviously, in the past, I've seen a few of these programs overseas revolving around charity and giving back and, kind of business stuff. And I always kind of thought this is a really cool program, but I was a bit too shy to take the leap because it doesn't just require a leap, in terms of doing it. You've got to, put everything aside, go into a foreign country and all that. And coming back from where I was before, that was something that was challenging for me. So yeah, that was a big step for me to take the plunge and to say, look, I don't want to procrastinate because, regrets, when you come to the end of your life, regrets are going to be the worst thing. And you just don't want to have too many of them. So I had this situation before when I was meant to go on a trip, and due to a medical thing, I sprained my arm. I wasn't able to go. And now when I look back on that, I really wish that, that hadn't been the case, because at the time it was different. But now when you look back, I wish I had done the trip. So that was a big part. I took the plunge and didn't. I went through a few interview stages to get to it. So it was a selective program. A few hundred applicants go through it every half year, and I was lucky enough to be chosen for the program. So I was very happy to be doing that. So pretty much they flew us out to Singapore. It's a 3-week intensive program. We started off with a few team building activities. So, we had to do like the amazing race around Singapore. So we had to go and find clues and, work as a team and collaborate and use our problem solving and, time management skills and whatnot. Then throughout the trip, we went on to doing company challenges. So I worked for, we got given teams or associated with them. I was chosen firstly to be part of Unilever Singapore, which, makes big brands like Ben and Jerry's. and we had to work on a company challenge in 1 week or 5 days. So we were given a problem. It was a revolving around marketing, and we had to, kind of ask, how can we implement or how can we drive sales with new strategies in the Singapore market with Ben and Jerry's? And, especially when you're not coming from a business background necessarily, you're coming in here and you've got a lot of common sense things you've got to ask yourself. Nothing like the textbook approach. You've got to look creatively, think outside the box and say, what can I do? This is a big brand. Anyway, we were competing against another team across the week, and we both had to present our strategies to actual company directors. So the head of marketing, there was another few people who sat in on the panel and listened to it. And that was pretty good. We actually ended up winning that challenge. So that was fun. I mean, it was very interesting to get part of the process and whatnot. But yeah, that was really good. And then we went on to do another company challenge. That one was for, I don't remember which company.
They've got a lot of brands, so don't blame me for forgetting. But
it was.
But yeah, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, it sounds like it was sort of things you weren't familiar with. It was obviously a new market, interacting with new people. So I can imagine that would be, if you were sort of this shy guy, as you said, sort of throwing yourself into that. Like, I've always found that if you do throw yourself into something, that's always the best way to learn, because if you try to ease into it or you start thinking about it too much, you just end up procrastinating. You never do it. But then if you just dive in, you're just forced to figure it all out. And then afterwards, you're a lot more confident in your own abilities, and you can sort of take those learnings moving forward. Did you feel something similar to that?
Yeah, I did. I guess, we went into the program with no expertise, no knowledge on anything, and to be able to brainstorm with colleagues, a marketing strategy that is easily implementable. And that's what they said. They said, this strategy is really cool. We want to look to implement this soon. To be able to do that with, a lot of former colleagues, or like kind of other people in the program, that was really good. And you do take a sense of accomplishment out of it, because you go with no expectation. You think, I don't know anything, but I'll give it my best shot. And then, when you end up coming up with a strategy that you're naturally proud of, which can be everyone in the program, you do feel good. You feel like you contributed back, and, you were able to think outside the box and challenge yourself for that week. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, it sounds like that was a really good experience for you. And kind of segues nicely into what I wanted to talk about, which is mentorship, because I know basically this whole experience was almost like a big mentorship experience in a way. Like, you're obviously working with people like senior executives, people in the company, sort of helping you out. It's learning new skills, learning new things. And I know from following you and following the stuff you talk about, you talk a lot about mentors and the importance of mentors and getting people to help you out, to learn new skills and do new things. And I know that you've paid money for courses, you've paid money for in-person mentors, and I'd be curious to know, like, how do you define mentorship, and what's the value of mentorship, and do we actually need to like spend money on it? Because Google's so powerful today. Like, if you want to start a business, you can Google how to start a business. You can watch YouTube videos. You can get all these resources for free. So someone might say, do I really need to pay someone to teach me this or pay for this course? Like, can't I just get it for free? So I'd be interested to hear how you define mentorship, what you think the value is, and whether we need to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Honestly, I love talking about mentorship. I mean, it's something that I've started embracing more so in the past 2 years. So yeah, mentorship, I mean, Google and the dictionary defines mentorship as a trusted advisor. So someone you can look up to, someone who can advise you on what you want to achieve, whether that's your goals or your projects or something in your personal life, or maybe it's a fitness goal, like, bike riding around Melbourne and the suburbs and things like that. So I think mentors are extremely important. But before we touch upon the topic, individually, people have to be able to say, look, I don't know what I need to know to get to my goal. You have to be humble enough to say, I don't know. Mostly, we don't know a lot of things. All I know is that I know nothing. So that's what I tell myself. And I obviously I've got a few different mentors. So one of my mentors is an investing mentor, and he taught me a lot about investing. And I give a lot of my success to his credit. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to do what I've done. So mentors are really helpful in getting what you want. in terms of your goals, because the mentor, ideally they've done what you want before you actually go out and do it. So like, let's say you've got a mentor, and they can run 3 minute 45 kilometers around the racetrack, and you're doing say 5 minute pace. It's best if you can shadow that mentor, and paying for it. Yeah, I mean, we'll touch upon that soon, but paying for it is, it's definitely something that you should look into as individuals. But if you can shadow them and you can see exactly what they do, how do they run these 3 minute 45 Ks, how do they eat, what's their nutrition like, what's their diet, and what's their sleep like. To be able to shadow someone in person, I mean, that's the truest form of learning. Obviously the school system teaches us of, auditory, kinesthetic, and visual learning, but the fourth bit of learning, which they don't talk about, is osmosis. So, when you're around someone who's done something before that you haven't done and you want to achieve it, seeing them and them doing it, their success, their habits, and the way they do things and their traits, they slowly rub off on you. If you are able to hang around with hugely successful people like your mentors, I think that's a great thing. Not only does it get you to your goals, but it improves everything around you in terms of like your social circle, if that's what your mentor does, or financially, if you've got like a property developer as your mentor, or a health mentor, or a relationship mentor, or whatnot. So I think the idea of mentorship is hugely important, and not only for everyday people. I think it's particularly important for entrepreneurs, because a lot of entrepreneurs out there, to be honest, a lot of them are very cocky, and I don't think they really know what they're doing. And I've been in that before, where I didn't know what I was doing. It's about the humility of saying, I need a trusted advisor. I need someone to guide me on the path of where I want to go, and to be able to listen and implement, what the mentor says, and follow them, because they've done it before and they can show you how to do it, or the path to success. So
Absolutely. I think that's a really key point worth rehashing when you're talking about osmosis, because you're right, that is definitely the truest form of learning. It's one thing to sit in a classroom or study like a book or watch a video of someone explaining something, but to actually like be in the presence of someone who's done what you want to do, watch how, as you said, how they just even live their life, like how they interact with people day to day, that does rub off, and you start to mirror like the people you're around them. If that person is where you want to be, that's the best way to get there. Essentially, you just copy what they've done and work towards that. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's important, and I think it's underrated by a lot of people, because, as you said, some people, they're too proud to admit that they don't know what they need to know.
yeah,
They don't feel like they need mentors. They think that they can work it on their own. And I think a lot of things you can work out on your own, but the question is, do you want to get where you want to go in 6 months, or do you want to spend the next 20 years figuring out on your own? So it almost accelerates the process, I've found.
I mean, that's really true. I mean, there's a few things you have to consider in terms of time. Obviously, people talk about going within, like, where do I find happiness? They say, oh, it's all within yourself. I think a lot of that's BS. I think that, having a mentor to obviously guide you and show you the way is great, like we touched upon just then. But yeah, as you said, if you can do something in 6 months, you don't want to take 20 years to do the same thing. People often say to me, why do I need a mentor? I can figure everything out by myself. You're exactly right. If you're going to take an extra 20 years to get where you are, that's, time is something you don't get back. And if there's anything, whether it's money or, relationships temporarily or things like that, you can all kind of recover it mostly to a degree, but time is one thing that cannot go back. And, you hear a lot of rich people saying, they would, I think Warren Buffett said, if he would give all his wealth if he could reverse 20 years off the clock and, go back and live life. So don't forget, I guess, not only is it the money, but when you're investing in this mentor, I mean, that's something that I think will be one of the greatest uses of money. But when you do things, you've obviously got the opportunity cost of time. So, yes, you can spend 20 years doing what you want to do, but if you had done that in 6 months under a mentor, the other 19 and a half years, that could have been spent learning and further accelerating the growth. So you don't only have the opportunity cost of time, but your opportunity cost of money, and the opportunity cost of other things that could have been done in that time, and other goals you could have achieved, and that all happens at an accelerated rate. So yeah, I definitely think you're correct on that. Cutting the learning curve and learning everything. And the other thing as well that a mentor helps with, if you've tried to look up certain things online, you might say, what's the best diet to follow to lose weight? And then you open the first 5 articles in Google. And then, one saying cut fruit, one saying cut exercise, one saying, go paleo. Then the next one says, oh, no, it says all the opposite. It says, eat as much fruit, go on an all fruit diet. And that's one of the most confusing things because you often have a lot of conflicting information that comes at you. And at the end of it, you got analysis paralysis. You've got so much information that has confused you that you don't know what to do. And then often most people give up on their goals and they do nothing about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think I'd be curious to get your input because mentors, I think we've obviously established that mentors are important and that they're worth having. But to the person listening, there might be someone who, let's take a business, for example. Let's say they want to start their own business and be successful in business, make a lot of money, whatever. So someone might say, it's all good and well, like I want a mentor, but like people who are successful are usually less accessible because everyone wants a piece of them. So how does someone actually get a mentor? Like what's some strategies? Like let's say you want to start a business, or you want to find a business, but like how would you go about, maybe you could give a personal example for this. I'm not sure if you have one on you, but like how do you go about actually finding a mentor, approaching them, starting to work with them? Like, have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, great question. How can people get mentors? Really good practical example. I mean, what I would first do is make a mentor hit list. So maybe make a short list of, say, anywhere between 5 to 10 mentors or potential mentors you want. And it can be anything. It could be, so I want Steve Jobs as a mentor, or it could be, I just want my uncle as a mentor. Either way, make a hit list. And then once you've got that hit list, you can start narrowing down strategies of, who do I really want to be my mentor and how can I get them to be my mentor? And often, as you said, really successful people who are straight at the top, they're not easily accessible. So you've got to implement different strategies to get in touch with them, whether that's through networking or you build your way up slowly. I heard once a guy got a successful mentor, and what he did is he had this mentor on his hit list. And what he did was he went to that guy's office every single day and he asked the receptionist, can I see, I forget what his name was, I think it was David. And the receptionist obviously pushed back on him saying, who are you? We don't know who you are. And David's busy right now. So he did that, I think, for 17 days in a row consecutively. And every day he went in, he kept getting pushed back. However, I think on the 18th day, he was able to go in, and the woman felt so sorry for the little boy, who was middle-aged or whatnot, that she said, go hide behind the pot plant. And, he comes down at 3:30 every day. And when he does jump in the elevator, you've got 30 seconds to sell him, or you've got 30 seconds to pitch him or convince him why he should be your mentor. And that was his one chance. That was his one shot. I think he ended up getting him as a mentor. So, you've really got to think outside the box. There's nothing taught in school. You've got to think, how can I get this to be my mentor? Whether if it's your uncle or if it's a family member who has been quite successful and you want them to be your mentor, it might be different in the sense that you could just straight up go ask them or call them and say, do you mind if I can shadow you? And you don't even have to straight out say, can you be my mentor? But you can spend time around them. You can work for free. You can obviously experience what they do day to day. You can travel with them or whatnot. But just getting around those hugely successful people, it'll do you wonders and get you towards your goals. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good insight. It's a good story as well. And I think to share, a practical example from my life, I wouldn't necessarily call him a mentor, but someone I wanted to pick their brain on and ask them advice. A guy named James Swanwick, he's sort of like an online businessman, has like a successful company selling sleep products and sort of had achieved something similar to what I wanted to do. So I wanted to pick his brain, and a good way to potentially reach out and connect with people who you want to ask for advice for or to get some form of mentorship is to help them solve a problem. So, for example, he lives in America, but was coming to Melbourne, which is the city that I live in, and he was flying in and was staying in the city, but sort of had to get from the airport to the hotel, obviously, and he could just pay for a taxi or catch a bus or whatever, but I actually reached out to him and offered to pick him up from the airport and drive him to his hotel. And it's about a 40-minute drive from the airport to the hotel. So that was 40 minutes where I could pick his brain and ask him questions. And I reached out to him and I said, I know you're coming to Melbourne. You don't know me, but I'd love to pick you up, and then maybe we could just chat. I had a few questions. It'd be great to ask." And he accepted that offer. So I went and picked him up and had basically a 40-minute conversation with him. And this is someone who charges like hundreds of dollars an hour for consulting. So if I had gone to him as a client, that would have cost obviously a lot of money and might not necessarily have done it. But the fact that I was helping him solve a problem, and which was getting from A to B for free, basically, for him, that was a way that he was more open to actually accepting that. Whereas if you just ask someone, "Can you be my mentor? Can you answer these questions? Like, what's in it for them?" So you got to almost put yourself in the other person's shoe and see how can you help them rather than just taking. So giving rather than taking. So,
Yeah, definitely. Reciprocal value, like give 10 times the value of what you want. And whether that's working for free, people say, why should I work for free? But, just having the opportunity to get around successful people, that's amazing. That in itself, I would be happy to work for free for people. And, it's not even like an unpaid internship because you're getting such an opportunity to get around those people. But yeah, what you said, that's really cool. I actually didn't know that about you. But those Sonic glasses, those really cool
yeah,
blue gothic glasses, amazing. Yeah.
yeah, that's the one. So yeah, so that was just a story, an example that I had from my life of how I've sort of managed. You don't necessarily want to go for the very top. So if you want to get business advice, it's probably not a good idea to try and get a meeting with Jeff Bezos, for example, the founder of Amazon, because you're never going to get, like, it's possible, but it's highly unlikely that you're able to get time with him. So it's almost better to find people who are just a few steps ahead of you. So rather than going for the very top, which would be Jeff Bezos, go for someone who's a few steps, like 1 or 2 years ahead of you. So for me, that was reaching out to this guy, James Swanwick, he's obviously done well, but he's not at Jeff Bezos level, but he could still offer a lot of insight and value. So it's almost like setting your sights a little bit lower, just so you can actually get the meeting and get some value that way, rather than just wasting your time trying to get to the very top. And the advice will probably be more relevant to you anyway. So
Yeah, definitely. I
yeah.
think that's a great strategy. And do you still keep in touch with him? Are you still kind of friends, and he knows you kind of well, or not really?
Yeah, we have. I've actually taken him to the airport twice, so I'm
Oh
sort of
yeah,
his taxi driver when he comes to Melbourne in a way. But
yeah, right.
yeah, we still connect via email, keep in touch, which is good. And so it's, yeah, like I didn't do anything particularly special for him. I just offered my time, but people remember that kind of stuff, so it's good.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I guess what people don't know about James Swanwick is always he actually reached out to Ty Lopez to be part of his inner circle, and Ty rejected him, saying, I don't have the time and resources to take him on. And then, he kind of said, if you send me or wire me through 25,000 US dollars, I'll mentor you. You can be part of, or you could be part of Ty's inner circle. And he didn't have the money at the time. He had to sell property and whatnot, but he got it done. And he said, look, here's the 25K deposited. Yeah, work with me. And, I think he mentioned he had gone through, I can't remember the number, whether it was 6 or 7 or 8 failed businesses. He had done so much before, and he had never been able to achieve success. And a lot of people would have given up on their goals there. But he knew that he had it in him, and that was a core interest for him. So he reached out to Ty, who's, worth millions of dollars, and said, mentor me. And, now I think he's doing recurring revenue of about 20 million a year from his Swanwick sleep glasses, probably a bit less than that. But he's hugely successful, isn't he? Yeah.
It's definitely a few million at least. But and yeah, just for the person listening, Ty Lopez is the guy who did the Lamborghini in my garage video. Sort of that's what he's famous for. Yes, he's sort of like an online entrepreneur. He's done very well for himself. So yeah, it's good. It's the circle of mentorship really. Like you reached out to him, I've reached out to him. It sort of goes down the chain, I guess. So
And one more thing, I
yeah,
mean, you
it's
asked a
good
really
big
good
step.
question. You asked a good question on should people pay for mentorship. That's a great question, and the answer is it depends really. I mean, if you could pay someone $500, like let's say you're meeting with James, say if he could teach you something really really cool about selling those habit planners, or let's say he had some really cool sales funnel trick, if you could pay him $500 and he could shave off 2 years of trial and error and experimentation and stuff, the question is, would that be worth it to you? Now, $500 to save 2 years of time, I think that's a bargain. So for me, if I could approach him and say, I'll pay you $5,000. But don't forget, it's not what you pay, but it's what you get. And if you can save all the time, save the money, save all that, it's hugely worth it. So it depends on the value you're getting. I mean, if you're paying, say, $500 to someone who hasn't really achieved what you want, maybe it's not worth it. But if you can find someone hugely successful who can help you and whatnot, and they have no vested interests or perverse incentives and things like that, it's definitely worth paying for.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. It's about the value, not the price. It's what return are you going to get from the money you spend. Couldn't agree more. And I think you have to, as you said, you have to use common sense. Like I think a lot of people are put off paying money for like courses or paying money for mentorship because they hear stories about like scammers who just take your money and like they don't get any value from it. And for sure that exists. Like definitely not gonna dispute that, but you just got to use common sense, I guess. Like research a person, like as you said, look for, do they have your best interest at heart? Like, have you sort of seen what else they've done? Have they got testimonials of people who they've successfully mentored in the past? So if you just use a bit of common sense, then paying for mentorship is definitely it's a good use of money for sure. Like probably the best, especially for young people. I feel like I've been thinking about it a lot lately. It's the best thing you can spend your money on really when you're just starting out, because you can invest in different things to try and get a return, like whatever it may be, real estate, stocks, whatever. But especially in the early stages when you don't actually have that much money to invest, if you can invest in mentorship and learn skills that you can then use to make money for the rest of your life, that's a good use of money, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and if you had to pay, I mean, giving the cash over and saying, here's $500 for an hour, mentor me, that's okay. I mean, if your mentor is happy to take a direct stake in your business, like say, give me 3% of everything you earn, or, they take something where they're not remunerated by the hour because, or sometimes even if you work for free or if they mentor you for free, that's great. But, sometimes if they don't take a direct money interest, because obviously people work by incentives, and if you're, paying them X dollars per hour, they're incentivized to work per hour. But if you give them, say, 5% of everything you earn from this project, they're incentivized now to make sure that you can earn as max as possible, because the higher you earn in terms of your project or whatnot, the higher their commission value will be. So that's incentivizing them for your success. So that's just the thought as well.
Absolutely, yeah, aligning incentives for sure. If you succeed and they succeed, that's always going to work out well for sure. Yeah, cool. Any other thoughts on mentorship? It's a sort of topic we could probably talk on for hours, but is there anything around that topic that you feel like you haven't said? Or
I think we've talked about a lot. I mean, I would, if I could make changes to this education curriculum or school curriculum, I'd recommend mentorship be a big part of that, because instead of doing year 11 or year 12 or those final years, if we could, or even if we still did that, if we could take 40 minutes or even 1 hour per week out of the schedule, and we could mentor someone who's hugely successful. Like if you're interested in fashion, you could go and shadow a fashion designer or a photographer. And, I think that would be a better use of time, because you can really, get a feel for whether you like it, and having that true osmosis and that true experience will let you know whether it's what you thought it would be. Like, I'm sure we've all thought, oh, it's going to be cool to be a doctor when we're a kid, or it's cool to be a police officer. But, when you look at it, maybe you've changed your mind. So by having that experience and the ability to see, is this what I want? And if it is, how far do I want to go into it? And the ability to self-educate and whatnot, I think that would be fantastic if we had, if it was implemented and more people took it on. Because especially young people, we don't have much money, but we have a lot of time. And if we can make good use of the time, I mean, that's invaluable. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Well, speaking of the education system and learning, you and I have a habit in common, which is reading. We're both quite avid readers. I see you're always posting books you're reading, which is what I do as well. And I was curious, have you always read books? Because for me personally, I never used to read books at all. I was kind of put off it by school, because you get all these boring books that you don't really want to read, and you have to sort of study them and take tests on them. And you couldn't really see the direct benefit of learning about this stuff. So I actually stopped reading books completely after high school, and then it wasn't actually until probably about 2 or 3 years ago that I really picked it up again, because I saw the value in it. And so now I try to read a lot of books and I get a lot of value from it. So I encourage you to read it, or is this something you started recently?
I actually started recently. I mean, I'm like you and probably everyone else who's young on this call. The school system actually discouraged us from reading. It taught us not to read. We had Shakespeare and all that back in the day, and it's so boring. We don't really care. So I think they found the average person after school doesn't even read a book for 3 years. So that's similar to us. But when I came out of school, I think that's how we're also in. We have similarities. We came through the works of Evan Pagan. And obviously, he sparked our self-education journey. He's an entrepreneur who does a ton of things on marketing and whatnot. But I guess when I woke up to the true reality of all the books out there, there's so much knowledge. You can pick up a book and learn whatever you want to learn, whether that's health, whether that's making money, whether that's relationships or whatnot. There's so much information out there. And to be able to see all the books, all the 130 million books out there, and narrow it down and find the good ones. There's so much good knowledge, and that comes from being curious. But I've got a little bit of a book collection behind here, and I know you read a lot of books as well, James. You're reading like 50 books a year, and I try and read a similar amount or a bit less. But I have only started it recently. I try and read a book a week, and I really do love it because I find so much value from the books that I read. So yeah,
absolutely. And I think the value in it that I see is that if you think about what a book actually is, it's basically someone's entire life work or something that they've been studying and learning about for 20 or 30 years, all condensed down into like this tiny book that's only a few hundred pages long that you can read in this week. So it's going back to, it's almost like a form of mentorship. You're condensing the learning curve from 20 years to learn it all yourself down into 1 week to sort of get the general gist of it all. And so that's what I really like about reading, and it's helped me tremendously. And you're right, I try to read. I've set a goal to read 50 books this year. I don't think I'm actually going to quite make it. I've read I think 40 so far, so I need to do 10 1 month. So it could be a busy month, but it's still possible. I guess in terms of like actual impact for you, like how has reading impacted you, and can you give any like specific examples of just ways your life is better or things that you've improved because of reading books?
Yeah, I mean, I guess reading's improved me in general. Obviously there's many factors to it. Like obviously to read a book, you need to have a lot of focus. You need to be able to sit down in the chair or sit down wherever you are, or I'm excluding audiobook to this, but let's say we're reading physical books. You have to have that focus to tune out every other thing and say, I'm going to read this. So having that focus, it builds discipline as well for other areas of your life. So that's what I found to be really helpful. But just the knowledge you learn. Like I've got a few books here. This one's Influenced by Cialdini. I think you've read that as well, James. It's one of the best marketing books. It talks about cognitive biases and whatnot. I mean, this book here, I bought this in Singapore for $18. So all the knowledge in there about social proof and how humans think, and practical psychology and how to market your products. I mean, I paid $18 for that. I got all the information, all the knowledge, and that's really fundamentally kind of put the foundations in for how humans think, what drives humans, how to sell better. It says the psychology of persuasion, and that's $18. Where you go through the school system, you're paying $4,000 a semester, and you don't get really any value out of it. So I mean, make friends with the imminent dead, and you can buy books for $5, like Sam Walton's Made in America, and the amount of value you get from that is tremendous.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's a great book. That's definitely on one of my top sort of 10 books of all time. I think it's just a good book for understanding how psychology works, and even like in a way, even if you're not in marketing a product or selling a product, just to be aware of the things that marketers actually use to get you to buy it, and so you can be aware of them. So yeah, it's a great book, and couldn't agree more with all your points. Let's talk about sales, because I think sales is a extremely fundamental skill for life in general, really, not just work or business. And I was really impressed that you were actually able to become the #1 salesperson for Vodafone, which is one of Australia's largest telecommunications companies, in 2017. And it's not like that was out of just like 10 people or whatever. It was out of 1,000 plus people, 1,000 plus employees. So it's quite an achievement. And I wanted to know, I guess, how did you end up in that sales role? Did you kind of just fall into it, or was that deliberate? And have you always been good at sales, or is this a skill that you actually developed?
To be honest, I never really expected it to happen. What I did was in the Christmas holiday break after school. That was like 2015, or sorry, that was the end of 2016. What I did was I printed 130 resumes. So it was a stack thick of resumes. I walked around Sydney with my folder. It was a paper folder. I went to like Newtown. I went to Pitt Street Mall in the CBD. I went all over Sydney and pretty much just handed my resumes out, to cafes, to pharmacists, to doctors' offices, to retail stores or whatnot. And I was coming to the end of my resume thing, and I was feeling a bit tired because that was such a big day for me. And I ended up walking into the Vodafone store in Pitt Street there. And obviously, I was just dressed normally. I had like a collar shirt on and some jeans, so quite casually just handing them out. And I met this lady, and she obviously took my resume. And the big companies, they don't really take resume hand-ins anymore. They're moving to online so they can streamline the process and whatnot. So I handed it into her, and I think she was impressed that she thought oh, he's handing a resume or something. I don't know why she did that. And she actually asked a colleague. She said to her, she's like, oh, like this guy just handed in his resume. Do you think he's good? And then they just looked at me and said, oh, we're gonna put you straight through to HR. And I didn't know that at the time, so I just continued on my journey handing resumes out. And I got a call from her. And she obviously put my details through to the HR recruitment manager, and it kind of started from there. And then I started towards the end of December 2016, and I went on for about 4 or 5 months. I had no idea of what I was really going to achieve that year. I thought this is fun. I enjoy talking to people now that I'm becoming more social. I enjoy selling these products because it's something I have no knowledge of previously, and I'm really enjoying it. And the sales process, because I think that it's really fun to do that. And for me, I find sales fun. So, I just did my business as usual. Didn't expect anything from it. And I just went on. And when I came to the end of it, I reached like June, and I realized that, oh, wow, like my ranking was quite high in terms of the national average. And that's not something I ever tracked or ever looked at. And there was a few different KPIs. There was like obviously overall sales, like, connections, like, mobile phones and things like that. Then you have insurance, and you have your accessories and things. There's a few different KPIs, and I was tracking well on that. So that kind of motivated me. Once I saw that, I felt very motivated to work very hard and continue that and continue learning. And I had a few, I don't know if I'd call them mentors, but I had a few different people in the store who actually helped me. And some people who were coming number one, number two in accessories and things like that, they were boosting me because I watched how they did it, and they were able to convey the buyer to be able to buy these speakers or buy this product or whatnot. So I saw how they did it, and I approached them again. I went up to them and I said, look, I think what you're doing is really cool. Do you mind if I shadow you? Do you mind if I sit over your shoulder? Literally sit over the shoulder and watch how they sell those products, the big speakers and the Beats headphones and all that. So that was really cool. And then I ended up just continuing with what I did, and I became very competitive at that. And as the year went by, I had a few different competitors come and get me. And, as it naturally got more competitive, there's a lot of backstabbing. The culture is really toxic and stuff like that. So, there's a lot of bullying involved and things like that. But as you break out of the mold and as you do bigger and better things, you're naturally going to get a lot of people who hate you and, whatnot. They're jealous. And, Michael Jordan speaks of this in his book. But, yeah, I don't know. I guess I came to the end of it, and, I'd done well. And I during that year, I hadn't read a single sales book or whatnot. But I think the thing that helped me was self-reflecting, learning from mentors. I had a few of those mentors in there. And they're able to teach me things like that. So, I think, yeah, it's a really cool year. I didn't expect any of that. And obviously, it's helped me a lot, not just inside of the work, but outside of work, your own business, or whether you want to, sell someone your perspective or sell someone your idea, or, why certain things should be the way they are. You've got to justify. So sales is not just about, making money and things like that. It comes from a whole broader thing.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I think the way I define sales is it's basically just communication. It's you have a perspective that you think is correct. So whether it's an opinion, as you said, or it's a product that you think is good and that you think someone should buy, like how do you're basically just communicating the benefits in a way that that person can actually understand. Because I think a lot of people have the perception of sales as some dude in like a cheap suit trying to like flog off used cars to them or something like that. But the way
Yeah.
I think of sales, it's just communication. It's just how do you showcase the benefits and actually help people, really. So I think that's awesome, man. It sounds like I think you were probably a bit of a natural, because even before you got this job, you had the sort of foresight to print out 130 resumes and go around and hand them out. Because I think most people print out one resume, go hand that in, then get bitterly disappointed when they get rejected, and then go curl up and cry for a bit before they go out and apply for another job. So, and I think persistence is one of the sort of key characteristics of a good salesperson. So it sounds like there might be a bit of natural talent there, but it definitely sounds like you worked hard as well. So
Who knows?
that's great.
I've recently been reading this book on Grant Cardone. He's a sales king and property tycoon. You know, he's really cool. He says, if you're not first, you're last. So I've been reading this actually after everything I had done, just to kind of understand a bit more about sales. And, you know, it's really good. So if you guys want to get started, that's a practical book. And I would recommend, you know, it's pretty cool. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
there's another good book by him, Sell or Be Sold, which is another good sort of fundamental principles of sales, which I think is a good way to approach it, because anyone can give you a tactic and say you need to like say this word, or like you have this tone of voice or something, but what are the actual like fundamental principles? I always like to talk about fundamentals rather than sort of tactics initially. Tactics have a place. It's more about that foundation, have a solid foundation. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, sales as well. Sales isn't... Oh, sorry, I just broke up a little bit. You're back?
Yeah.
Welcome. Yeah.
Bit of lag, but so it sounds like I'm talking over you, but go ahead.
Yeah, sales is not about using, you know, one word. It's not about saying new and improved product and then people will buy it. It's about driving people through the process of sales. And if you know a lot about internet marketing things, you've got a funnel. So you obviously, you know, bring things down the top, and as you build them down each layer of the funnel, you know, you get the sales at the bottom. But it's the whole process of engaging people. And, you know, you've got to understand that humans, most of them, 90% plus, they're very emotional driven. Or emotionally driven, they're not logically driven. So if you're able to appeal to the senses, you know, that's great. And that's what Apple does. I mean, we're filming this off 2 iPhones right now, and you're probably using a Mac as well. So, you know, we're all using iPhones, and Apple is great at marketing. You know, they don't necessarily have the best phone on the market. They don't have the best computer in terms of specs or functionality, but it's sexy. You know, people think like Apple is cool in the way they've designed it. And the way they're able to sell a phone for more than $2,000 and people still buy it, they're great, and they're masters at emotionally marketing. So, I mean, I've got Steve Jobs' biography back there as well by Walter Isaacson. That's really, really good. I would recommend reading that. But yeah, that's a few things to understand about it.
Absolutely. I think that's a good point. I always say there's people buy on emotion and justify with logic. So it's one of those things, like all the real like tech geeky guys and girls never have Apple products, because you're right, they're usually not the best products in terms of specs and price point and all that, but as you said, they're sexy. So yeah, people buy with emotion for sure.
I mean, and it goes back to, you know, looking at the 25 cognitive biases, which the book there talked about, Cialdini's book. But, you know, the liking and disliking bias, if you're able to, you know, to understand that bias, which says that, you know, we tend to engage with people or buy from people or whatnot, whatever the context is, who we like. So even if someone is selling us an amazing product that's really cheap and it has the best specs and unlimited warranty, but you don't like the person, you're very likely not to buy from that person. So, you know, that's just one way. It's based on emotions and appealing to the senses and whatnot. And, you know, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. Well, I wanted to talk about financial literacy, which is something you've kind of got, I guess you could say, a bit of a passion for, a bit of an interest in, and you've got a few projects around that. So you've got an online course that you have, which basically teaches young people principles of financial literacy, sort of how to manage money, best uses of money, things like that. Yeah. And it's definitely an important topic. Money is obviously something that everyone needs, everyone wants, everyone should know how to manage their money and manage it better. So it's an important. I was wondering, why did you feel the need to start teaching this? Because if going back to what we were talking about before, if you Google how to manage money, like what do I do with money? How do I make more money?
Yeah.
There's a million people like teaching different things around money. So did you see there was like a gap in the market or like you felt like the current sort of the conventional wisdom was wrong? Like what made you want to start teaching financial literacy to people?
I guess there's no particular reason. However, financial literacy is very important. Again, something not taught in school. How to manage money, how to invest money, things like that. So I think it's not common sense. The reason most people don't know, I think 25% of people in Australia, they're in credit card debt they can't get out of. They make bad investments here and there, and they don't know how to invest their money. They think putting their money in a bank account with 2% a year is good, but they don't really know what could be better. So I think I did it for the pure reason of educating people, and not really educating because people can educate themselves, but I guess to spread awareness. And a lot of my followers, they're based all around the world, so they obviously have this goal as well. They want to improve financial literacy because no matter where we are in the world, I guess a lot of us have that goal of financial independence. We want to be able to become financially independent, not stuck to that 9 to 5 job, for 40 years and then, having no money, paycheck to paycheck or very limited savings. So whether you want to be super wealthy and, be a property tycoon or a top share investor, or whether you just want to be able to, make a bit of passive income on the side to escape the rat race or, ease the burden and the pressure and things like that. I think financial literacy is very important, and it's not just about what you make. If you make $400,000 a year, some people might consider you successful. But if you're spending $500,000 a year and you're going into debt, to fund your lifestyle or whatnot, that's not the best thing. So my mentor always told me it's not what you make, it's what you keep. So even rich people, some rich people, I know a few of them who don't know how to manage money, and they can make $500,000 a year, but because they've got so many liabilities and their lifestyle is very too expensive for what they're making, they're unable to get ahead. So I think it's a very important point, and since it's not taught in schools, it's very simple to learn. And this book also shaped my understanding on money a few years ago. Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. He is a little bit controversial. People think he's a bit of a scam and he's anti-education. But I mean, this book is I don't know. I think it's probably like $10 or something. Like $18 in Kenneconya. And just read that book or rent it from your library. It will shape your knowledge on financial literacy. So just understanding the basics of money and things like that, I think it's really, really important for everyone, whether you want to make money or not.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I think you're right. That's that book you showed, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's a good book. I've read it as well, and I think what you said as well is an important point. You don't have to fully agree with what everyone does to at least sort of get one or two gems of wisdom from what they say. So I think there's some definitely good points in that book. I think one of the things I took from it was just that, I guess, that mindset shift of being an investor. So not even just in terms of money, but being an investor in time. Like where's your money going? Where's your time going? Where's your resources going? Whatever that may be, and making sure it's going into something that's going to actually get you a return rather than just going straight out the door again. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Think like an investor. Yeah, as you said, I mean, it couldn't be more true. I mean, I don't know, I talk about too many books, but this is another book. James, I don't know whether you've read this, Seneca's On the Shortness of Life. It talks about how people are stingy with money, but
it's on my list.
You should read it. I mean, it's very short, and it's like Shakespeare. You can't really understand it, but it talks about how people are so stingy with their money. They won't give you $5, but they're happy to waste so much time on unnecessary things, and so it's a balance. But yeah, always think like an investor. I think that's a really important mindset thing to take away from it. Yeah.
Yeah, I love how you got all these books lined up. You're just ready to pull them out.
Yeah,
it's good. So I guess one question that there's some people in the audience might be thinking is, so you're this young guy, you're sort of early 20s. Like, what does this guy know about money? Like, I should be learning from someone who's older or more experienced. So, I mean, what it is about you that, like, what makes you qualified to talk about, I guess, investing, financial literacy, all this kind of stuff for someone who's listening who might be a bit skeptical or just want to know kind of what are your qualifications? Like, what would you say to someone like that?
yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, what I've been able to do is I started investing at the age of 14. So that was when I was in early primary or like early secondary school, and I was able to go and learn from mentors. So people who have achieved decades ahead of where I am, I think 30 or 40 years above me, and I learned from them, all the steps and all the processes they use, to analyze companies and generate valuations and look at trends and assess things like that. So I guess for myself, over the past 7.5 years, I've invested more than $10,000 of my own money in courses, seminars, in-person events. And I've actually, not just that, because anyone can go and do that, but whether or not can you put your own money into the market and make it work for you? Like they say, people lie, but numbers don't. So obviously, as I've gone through, I've been able to put more money to work in the market and invest it. And I've generally proved, over the long term that my share returns are quite, they're far superior to what a lot of, bankers are getting in the market and what a lot of hedge funds are getting. And I'm not saying that to brag or boast, but if I'm able to go and teach myself and educate myself to get a solid return, which is about, 20.5% per year for the past 6 years, and the bank's paying 2%, and a lot of superannuation funds, they're only returning, maximum 8 to 10% in the good years. If I can do it, I think anyone can do it. And to be able to break down the path where people think like, investing, I've got to get this complicated trading software, I've got to go and talk to a banker, and he might rip me off, and they paint it as very inaccessible, whereas most things in life that you want to learn, they're very accessible. You just have to kind of sort the path out, work out what's the quickest way to get where I want to do. So I guess that's why I believe people should listen to me. Obviously, I've got results and testimonials to back myself up. I've actually taken on a few students in April earlier this year, and I took them. They knew nothing about investing. They had very limited capital, and I was able to take them on to to achieve 80% return in about 6 months. Now that's not typical, and you shouldn't keep that as your benchmark. But if I'm able to do it, and I'm able to take my students on the path to do it, what's to say that you guys can't do it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. And I think it's so you've basically learned from people. You're sort of still obviously on the journey yourself, but you've learned and invested in yourself to learn from these people who are ahead of you, and you're sort of just passing on that knowledge, and obviously you use those skills to get good results. So yeah, that's awesome. It's good that you've got the numbers to back it up, essentially.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's, I guess, like a few practical tips, like in terms of investing or just money in general, like do you have a few, I guess, quick practical tips if someone's, say, early 20s, even like late teens, or whatever age group you think you sort of appeal to the most? Like what's a few things they should be aware of with money, or things they should be doing with their money, just how to manage money better, I guess?
I mean, there's a few simple principles. Obviously, I look at money in versus money out. So if you're spending $600 a week and you're making 400, the simple math shows you that you're $200 over your money. You're going to have a deficit, and how you fund that, maybe it's credit card debt or whatnot. That's something to consider. Obviously, in terms of saving and stuff like that, you've got to understand a bit about the economy. So if you're saving, putting money in the bank, which most people think is the way to go, and you're earning, say, 2 or 2.5% in interest, you've got to understand that inflation and tax will largely eat up what you get. So you need to be earning a higher rate of capital to be in order to get ahead. And that goes down to compound interest as well. If you've seen the compound interest exponential graph, it shows that, if you're investing, high rates of return, say you're achieving a 10% return, and you're going from, say, year 1, year 2, year 3, it's very slow at the beginning, but if you're consistent and you can maintain those principles, you can see that it goes up a lot over the long term. So I would obviously get the basic finances in order, and then obviously understand how to invest and which vehicle is right for you. Now, the share market's not the best vehicle for everyone. It requires a lot of temperament. You need to be able to stay calm when a lot of shit is happening. So if the market's crashing here or whatnot, and you'll get panicky and stuff like that, it's probably not the best vehicle for you. I've got a few friends who get scared when the market drops 20%. They get really, really scared, and they sell everything out, and they just simply don't have the temperament to be able to stay invested for the long term. And that's something that I do in terms of a long term. It's not a short term approach. I don't buy to make money tomorrow or in 6 months, but I keep it for the very long term. So yeah, I guess and another one is obviously opening a brokerage account. You guys can get started with that through your local bank or someone you've seen. Opening that brokerage account. Sorry, my live just finished. I'm going to put this one back on.
Yeah, start it again. So yeah,
Oh, quickly.
we'll yeah, that goes quick. So yeah, we'll link to all that stuff. Obviously, you've got a website where you've got some practical tips and people can learn more about what you're talking about there, which is great. So we'll definitely link to that.
The
What's
bio.
that?
I'm taking on some students. I've got an application form in my bio, which should be wherever you're watching. It's up in the corner. If you guys click that one and fill out that application form briefly, I'll be in contact with you guys if you want me to mentor you one-on-one. And I've had a bit of demands from people. So obviously fill out that form, and if you're a good fit, I'll be in contact with you guys to mentor you.
Awesome. So for the people on the podcast, that's go to Ryan's Instagram, which we'll link up, and you'll be able to see that there. But speaking of Instagram, I wanted to talk a bit about personal branding and social media, because this is sort of how I guess we connected initially. You've got a active Instagram account with, you've got over 2,000 followers, and you post to that daily, and you post some really good content. So make sure you follow Ryan. We'll link that up so you can make sure you do that after you listen to this. But you basically said you started doing this about 6 months ago, really like embracing social media, using that to build your personal brand. And the question is for you, it's a bit of a buzzword these days, personal brand. Like people are saying they need to build their personal brand. They need to be on Insta, Snapchat, Facebook, all these different things, YouTube. But some people also argue that it's just really vanity. It's a form of narcissism. It's like a distraction. You don't actually get anything from it. So I'm curious to hear your point of view. Like, is the personal brand something that everyone should have and that everyone should work towards, or is it just a distraction? Is it just a waste of time? What's your thoughts on that?
I like how you've introed that. That's great. Yeah, okay. A lot of aspects to this. I mean, yeah, in terms of what you covered before, is it just vanity? Is it pure narcissism? The reason I have a personal brand is I want to differentiate myself. So, when people say, who is Ryan Tan? We're living now in a world of 7.5 billion people. You've got to differentiate yourself. The world's becoming extremely competitive in terms of hiring for jobs. The economy is changing. And if you can differentiate yourself and you have an audience, and you can say, I'm Ryan Tan, I'm an investor, and people know that, I think that's very powerful. But it's not just what it means, in terms of other people, but I actually enjoy doing this myself. So, teaching is a great way for me to learn, and I enjoy sharing my findings on my educational or entrepreneurial journey, reading books and learning from mentors and stuff. So I kind of share back. And again, it is an income source for me as well. So there's a lot of different reasons I do it. Does everyone need to have a personal brand? I mean, I don't know if they need to have it. I mean, naturally, a lot of people can't have a strong personal brand. And I'm not saying that mine's great, but a lot of people can't do it because people have anxiety when they talk to a camera. You know, sometimes the presentation is not there, or they don't have the content. They don't have the enthusiasm to run a personal brand, because it's not just a matter of posting something. Like, as you would know, James has a strong personal brand as well, reading books and sharing his journey and stuff as well. But it's a constant thing. You've got to keep posting. You've got people watching and things like that. So yeah, I think it helps differentiate yourself. Not everyone needs to have it, but it depends what you're doing. As an entrepreneur, I think it's more important than, say, other people to have that personal brand going, because it differentiates yourself in such a crowded market. So yeah, and in terms of narcissism and vanity and things like that, depends how you look at it. I mean, if you look at like the dark triad testings and things like that, which tests narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and it goes into the narcissism inventory. Like, vanity is one of them. Just because you hold a camera up to your face and you start talking, or just because we're on a live Instagram here, doesn't mean I'm vain. Doesn't mean I'm narcissistic. I mean, I scored quite low in that test. But there are people who use social media, and people say the rise of narcissism is largely coming from social media. So it really depends, which perspective you look at it. I mean, if you come on as a personal brand and people are boasting a lot about themselves, or they're saying it's all for me and whatnot, you can kind of tell when it is overly narcissistic. But if you're coming from the perspective of bringing tons of value to people, sharing your findings and all that, and I don't ask for any, I've never asked for anything in exchange for that. So it really depends what you come, in which way you come from it. And as I alluded to before, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are very cocky. They think they're the best, and they start posting things like, they're up at 4 a.m. and, they think they're really cool and things like that. But, I don't think that it doesn't have to be like that, because if you're coming, people like Gary Vee, for example, I think he's tremendous in terms of his impact. He's helped so many people. He gives great information and knowledge out. And you've got other people like Grant Cardone and Ty Lopez, and we all alluded to them before. I think they're providing tons of value. So I wouldn't say it's narcissistic. So it really depends how you look at it, and it depends on the individual themselves as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I think, like you said, the reason I started posting stuff and doing this was, it was actually quite selfish reasons. I wanted to basically practice like public speaking, practice my communication skills. And then it helped me have accountability when I was actually like reading books, because I knew I was going to have to actually post what I learned. So it actually helped me like remember more stuff. So it's almost like people watching the videos, people seeing the stuff I was posting, that was almost like a side benefit. The main benefit was actually like the practical skills I was developing and learning from doing that. Like, I've never been a confident speaker or a confident presenter, and nothing's more humbling than when you film a video of yourself and watch it back and realize how terrible you are at speaking and talking about your perspective. So I think you're right. It's a tool, and it depends how you use it. Some people, if all they care about is just getting the most likes possible, and they don't actually use it to develop skills or develop any sort of brand or make any sort of money with it or whatever, then I can definitely understand why people would see that as narcissism. But like you said, it's a tool. It's you can choose how you want to use it, whether you use it for something productive or not. So, but I do think you do have to watch what you're doing, because there was a point where I felt like I was using it too much. I was like just on Instagram constantly and always like looking and posting. So there's obviously, with anything in life, there's limits and things you need to keep in mind. But I think overall, it's as long as you're in control and it's not controlling you, I think it's a good tool for sure.
That's definitely right. And I mean, if we go into social media and explore that, a lot of parents will say to like their kids, get off social media, get off Facebook, it's a waste of time and things like that. And then again, it comes down to how you're using it. Like, people who use Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all those kind of tools, if they use it for digital marketing and they're running a social media agency, and they're making money from that, and that's their main occupation or what they're doing, things like that. I mean, I could argue that, it's the best for them. And, for advertisers and things like that, they have access to an enormous amount of data to run Facebook ads off and things like that. So, people who, look at it from extreme perspectives, like, Charlie Munger says, avoid extreme ideologies. People who say, oh, it's terrible. And then, it's not terrible, but then it's not the best thing that's ever been there. So it depends how you're using it. Like I've been, like, as you said before, James, I've been there where I've, sat on Instagram or, I've logged on to Facebook to check one thing, and 1 hour later, I'm still going through the feed. So it just depends how you use it. And if you use it productively, then it's great. And if you're not, then you've got to reevaluate.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I was curious what you think, like where you see the future going in terms of social media and personal branding for especially people like you're talking about before, like entrepreneurs, people who are more like, I guess, micro celebrities in a certain niche. Like, what do you think the future looks like for those sort of people and personal branding and social media around that?
Yeah, I think it's tremendous. I've been thinking about that recently. Like, where is social media a trend or whatnot? And I've had a bit of a think about it. And I believe now that social media is not a trend anymore. It's been here for a long time, but it's more of a necessity. Like, obviously, if you're running a personal brand, it's very helpful for that. But whether you're a business and you want to advertise to potential clients, or even for personal reasons like staying in touch with family and friends who are overseas, and Facebook is a great platform to network with everyone and to keep everyone together, to share photos and things like that. So I think Facebook, in terms of social media, I think it's only going to grow from here. And, that's why it's good to be on social media as well, because, we're doing personal brands like yourself, James, and also me and, countless other people. We can learn how the algorithm works. We can learn, how social media works on different platforms, and, what conveys audiences and things like that. So yeah, I think it's got a big future ahead of it. But then again, in terms of the internet era, I think we're in a massive space of opportunity now where people are able to do social media marketing agencies and consult businesses, and that's all legit and stuff. But maybe in 10, 20 years, I don't know what's going to be there. It might be like artificial intelligence or augmented reality or those kind of things. So yeah, I think it's going to grow from here on, and it's just very, very important. It's dominating at the moment anyway. So yeah.
It's definitely worth getting educated on for sure. Well, sort of coming up to the tail end of the interview here, but just had a few final quick questions that I'd be curious to hear your answers for. First of all, you may have talked about it already, but have you got a favorite book or a book that has had a really big impact on you that you could share with us? It might be one of those ones you've already brought out from your magic pile, but I'd be curious to know because I'm
Yeah,
always looking for new books to read.
sure. I'm just gonna have a look here. I mean, there's a few books. I guess this year I've been doing different kinds of reading. So sometimes I look at autobiographies, and sometimes I look at self-help, and then sometimes I'm looking at fiction. So yeah, a few books. This one's really good. Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure you guys all know him. He's crushing it. It came out like in February this year, and he talks about obviously social media and those platforms at the top like Facebook, Instagram, things like that. I think that's had a big impact on on me towards the beginning of the year, because obviously it taught me about the importance of it, like Facebook and those things that have billions of daily active users every day. So it's a great tool, but also, how to, structure yourself and structure your business to provide a compelling offer and things like that. In terms of investing, this is a fantastic book. It's called Valuable, so like valuable, written by Roger Montgomery. And he's one of the people I started, not like a mentor, but I did go to see him at in-person seminars and things like that. And he helped me in terms of the foundational aspects of investing. So yeah, I would say those two books have been really, truly amazing for me. And I know we talk about this in, even, from half a year's time or a year's time, I'm going to have different books, and there's a lot of books on my wish list that I want to get to, but, I had a lot of things on recently, so the reading hasn't been up the top of the priority list. So yeah, I mean, what about yourself, James? What have been some really good books from you that you've read?
Oh man, so many. I put together a PDF of some notes on books that had especially big impacts for me. I haven't actually got it up at the moment, but if anyone wants it, they can send me an email, which is just james@jamesharrison.com, and I'll send it to you. But it's one of the books that I took a lot of notes from there is it's funny. It's actually a book that's meant for parents. It's called How to Talk So Kids Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk. So it's basically a book on how to communicate with kids. But the funny thing is, kids and adults are a lot more similar than people might realize. So the principles apply to talking to anyone, whether it's kids, whether it's your boss, whether it's peers. And so that helped me a lot, just in terms of how to communicate with people, communication styles. To give you a practical example from the book, there's one section on empathic listening. So actually, when you're listening to people, when they say something, you basically you validate their feelings by sort of repeating back to them what they said in your own words to show that you understand it. So that helps people feel understood and makes them more open to your influence and your opinions. So if you're talking to someone, even if it's like a disagreement, you can kind of convey understanding. It's been said before, first seek to understand before you seek to be understood. So just there's a lot of like small little practical tips like that in the book, and it's a good one. So I'll leave with that one. So put that on your list.
Yeah, there's so many good books, isn't there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. There's definitely more than you could read in a lifetime. So trying to get through them one at a time. I guess is there anything else that I haven't asked you, or you want to make sure that you give to the audience before we finish up here? Like any other points or takeaways that you think would be really good for people to know? Anything else I haven't asked you?
I guess not really. I guess the kind of thought I've been having, and it's really relevant for everyone, is the economy is changing at such a rapid scale. We've seen a lot of despise of big businesses and things like that. And just everything's changing, a lot of trends, things that used to be done before, now they're being replaced and superseded, and technology is improving. So I think, yeah, what we talked about today, they're a great case of practical takeaways. Like if you can do investing, if you can do social media, if you can do, a bit of entrepreneurship and business ventures and things like that. I think those three things will really set you up for the future. But a few other things which we didn't touch upon in great detail, like applied psychology and marketing and learning how people think and all that. I think if you're able to take education into your own hands and really explore what's out there. Like you mentioned before, I've been looking into credit scores and how credit works in Australia and how you're able to maximize your credit score and why that's important. Small things like that, I think they can have a big impact on your life. And it's very interesting, versus, if you're thinking like what everyone else is thinking and, going at the pace which everyone else is going and the economy is going, I think that you'll be left behind. So it's really important to take education into your own hands, like you yourself and I have done, and teach ourselves as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Taking your education into your own hands, not waiting for someone else to teach you or show you the way is definitely important. So couldn't agree more. Well, last question is really, what's the best way for people to connect with you, Ryan? If someone wants to get in touch with you, if someone wants to learn more about what you're up to, what you're doing, what's the best way for someone to get in touch?
Best way is probably Instagram at the moment, guys. So if you search for me at the real Tan, so the real is RYRY and Tan, and then an underscore, you'll find me there. So yeah, that's probably the best way. I've got a Facebook page as well, but that's just in its junior stages. So probably Instagram's the best way for now.
Yeah, awesome. And we'll link that up for sure, so that people can easily find you and connect. So yeah, if you go to Ryan's page, give him a follow, send him a DM, tell him you heard him on this interview, and yeah, hopefully you find his content valuable. He's putting out a lot of good stuff, and yeah, it was a pleasure meeting you in Sydney about a month ago. Whenever I came up, I could sort of tell from our interaction that you're a good genuine guy, and you're doing some good stuff and helping people. So yeah, appreciate your time here today, and thanks a lot. We'll have to do a round 2 at some point.
I really love these calls and interviews, and thanks for reaching out to me, James. I really appreciate it. We're doing similar things, and it's great to learn from you as well. And I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast. So thanks for reaching out to me too.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a great day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and speak soon.
Thanks, James. Speak soon. Bye.